Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Nomad, the World is My Beat. I'm journalist Liza Foreman, and I'm taking you around the world with me. This week's episode is called Working in Dangerous Places, from Tijuana to the Golan Heights. Now, by training, I'm what's called a film trade journalist. That means I learned the ropes covering the entertainment industry as a business-to-business reporter. That's the world I've inhabited as Berlin bureau chief for Variety, London correspondent, US editor for Moving Pictures, a film reporter at the Hollywood Reporter and the Wrap in LA, and every year producing the Cannes Market News for the best team on earth at Film Francais during the Cannes Film Festival. And I should say, thankfully, I was never assaulted by Harvey Weinstein, though he did once threaten to hit me at a private party in Cannes. But that's a story for another day. The point is, if you're on the film circuit, and these days the fashion and travel circuit too, you're not usually considered to be in a dangerous spot. I don't cover wars. I've never wanted to be a war correspondent. I've taught journalism, and I have young students who burn to do exactly that, and good for them, but that was never my path. And yet life unfolds all around us, and as journalists we respond to it. It turns out I am sometimes in the wrong place at the right time, which for a journalist is actually the right place at the right time. So how does this work in practice when it comes to being in dangerous places or telling more dangerous stories? Let me give you some examples. Paris, April 2019. Notre Dame went up in flames. I was crossing town, saw the smoke and went straight there. I don't cover breaking news, but I have a press pass and the police let me behind the red lines. I was standing there as officers told me the cathedral could be down in 15 minutes. I contacted the Sun online as I stood there, and suddenly I was feeding live information from the cordon. I'm not the journalist who jumped on the Eurostar as it started burning. One colleague from the Daily Mail somehow walked straight in with Emmanuel Macron and his team, apparently because he was wearing a suit and had the nerve to hover. It's not exactly what I'm trained to do, but I more or less have an idea of how to do it. You know, that's how it goes. Suddenly you find yourself standing watching a piece of history burn right behind the police line, and you just do what journalists do. So we're here at the Notre Dame Cathedral the morning after one of France's most famous cathedrals almost burnt to the ground. I'm here with
Robert Hardman, author, journalist, Daily Mail writer.
Thank you, Robert. And can you tell me something about your experience last night? I understand you managed to get into the cathedral last night.
Yeah, I was at my desk in London till about 6 p.m. last night, and suddenly the word came through to get to Paris. I arrived about 10:30, made my way over here, and came through streets full of very shocked, really deeply distressed people. Many of them on their knees, praying on bridges, on the riverbanks, singing hymns, saying prayers in a state of utter bewilderment that possibly the most iconic and emblematic landmark in the whole of France was probably about to fall down. I managed to make my way through the crowds and some of the police cordons, got as far as the outskirts of the cathedral precincts here, and then saw a delegation of rather important looking people heading for the west door and tagged along. No one stopped me, and suddenly there we were inside. I turned out I was with the French Prime Minister, Edouard Philippe, and some of the fire chiefs, and we went inside, and it was a scene of utter devastation. There were still bits falling off the ceiling, sparks and the odd flame above. We were in about an inch of water on the floor, and it was a dreadful smell, but the key thing was that the towers you see behind me were in one piece. They weren't going to come down at any minute, so that, I think, was a source of immense relief to everybody. And then suddenly through the gloom there appeared, lit up by a fireman's torch, this extraordinary image.
Some of the images you're looking at now were taken in the Sinai. I was on jury duty at a film festival in Egypt in Sharm el-Sheikh, surrounded by wonderful filmmakers watching wonderful work. But Sharm el-Sheikh has suffered badly after a passenger plane came down over it a few years earlier in what may or may not have been a terrorist attack. Tourism had collapsed, it wasn't considered a safe place to go. But nonetheless, I survived the festival, and after it, I decided to cross the Sinai by taxi and cross the border into Israel and travel into the West Bank to Bethlehem, where my paternal family is from. A couple of days after I passed through this deserted landscape by taxi, all alone, often on completely empty roads, 2 people were killed near St. Catherine's Monastery. So yes, that could have been me. I made it into Bethlehem. I made it out again. I was there before the Gaza war, but the West Bank was hardly tranquil. And on another occasion, at the age of 17, I did actually walk into Bethlehem in the first Intifada, where the entire place was like a ghost town, and soldiers greeted me with rifles in their hands. On another trip to Israel a few years ago, I accompanied a film producer to the Golan Heights, a Palestinian Druze production filming among deserted villages on the razor-thin border with Syria. And I remember standing there watching the cast and crew dancing, filming, living under the watchful eyes of Israeli tanks patrolling the ridge above us. And what happened? Some of them decided to break out in a Palestinian dance. Tanks pointed towards Syria, pointed in a sense at all of us. A lot of people just wouldn't go there, but I went. Then there's Tijuana. Please do go back and watch my death threats from dancers in Los Angeles episode where some of this comes up. But here's a short version. I was on a luxury cruise ship travelling from Miami back to LA via South America when we docked in San Diego. Everyone else went to the zoo for the afternoon, but I crossed the border alone, walked into Tijuana and found the migrant camps. There'd been a caravan that had walked north from Honduras and had been in the news the entire time we were at sea. I was determined to go and find them. I made it back, it was fine, but Tijuana is not at any point a place you want to be wandering around by yourself. On a separate occasion, I went there to report for the New York Times, this time on housing, in a city where kidnappings are routine and the cartels are not a background detail. And then there was Los Angeles itself, perhaps more dangerous than any of that. When I arrived in LA accompanied by a bipolar dancer from France who ended up threatening to kill me, I found a 10-inch knife under her pillow. Her friends came with guns to get me. That is not a situation you want to find yourself in. And I can tell you that from experience, because for a period I was living in a neighborhood in Santa Monica wedged between 2 rival gangs, it's not a lot of fun. Every other night there were police helicopters overhead, officers running through the yards, gang members wandering the streets with guns. One of them stole my car and I had to get it back from him personally, later getting the LAPD involved after they started trailing me. The people in the local shop who were trying to help me were on the floor, genuinely terrified they were going to be killed. So yes, LA, not a place I'm in any hurry to return to. And then just last week, something a great deal closer to home. I'd had a rare treat and got my nails done and was walking back to the 7th arrondissement. I was in the tunnel when I heard it, evacuate. I looked up and saw the iron gate at the far end was firmly shut. There was no way out except for to run back up the steps I'd just come down in a hurry. And as I emerged, I could see police flooding the area from every direction. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I had my press pass. I could have shown it, asked questions, live streamed the whole thing. It didn't occur to me. I was operating on pure instinct, thinking, am I going to get out of here alive? It turned out that a man known to police had attacked officers during the weekly ceremony at the Arc de Triomphe. And then there were the Malibu fires. This, I will admit, was probably the most reckless thing I've ever done. I drove up to the police checkpoint. Malibu was on fire back in 2018. The officer looked at me and said, "Ma'am, there's no rescue beyond this point." I showed him my press pass and kept going. I drove all the way around Malibu, photographing everything completely alone. The wind could have turned at any moment. Anything could have happened. But I made it to the town hall meeting a few days later where desperate residents were trying to find out if their houses were still standing, and I had access that they didn't. People were begging to come with me. That was not a smart move, I know that, but I got the story for the Daily Beast. So do I have the chops? In certain situations, apparently yes. I'm not someone who runs towards gunfire. After the LA years, I have a particular aversion to spaces where the unpredictability involves weapons. But here's the truth about being a journalist, even one who primarily covers film. You still show up. You still tell the stories, even when you're standing in a burning landscape or a sealed tunnel or behind a police line watching a cathedral fall. That's how it goes. That's the job, and I wouldn't have it any other way.